Paris, October 16th, 1793. A chilling dawn broke over the conciergerie. In the Place de la Révolution, a monstrous contraption of stark, new wood had been erected overnight. Not a traditional gallows, but a grim machine adapted for swift, merciless efficiency. A dedicated executioner and his terrifying tool, the guillotine, awaited. The throng begins to swell. Murmurs ripple through the vast crowd. Today, a queen will die, the first in France's history to face the blade. Marie Antoinette, the woman who symbolized the excesses of the monarchy and sparked a revolution, will meet her fate this morning. Within the prison walls, in a desolate cell that has been her confinement for the past 76 days, Marie Antoinette stirs to her last day of existence. At 37, she still carries the regal bearing that once charmed the most opulent court in Europe. Her few remaining loyal attendants, a nun and a chambermaid, assist her in dressing. Marie Antoinette has chosen a plain white dress and a simple white cap, a stark contrast to the silks and jewels of her past, yet chosen with a quiet defiance. "I hope the executioner is quick," she is said to have remarked, a comment attributed to witnesses, revealing not only a fading hope, but a grim understanding of the inevitable. How did Marie Antoinette come to this dreadful end? Daughter of Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, a powerful and pragmatic ruler, and Emperor Francis I. Marie Antoinette grew up in the sophisticated Habsburg court, where she was educated in royal decorum, and the arts, though perhaps not in the pragmatism that would later serve her. Upon arriving in France in 1770 as a 14-year-old archduchess, she was admired for her fair complexion, blue eyes, and voluminous blonde hair, but she possessed something more fleeting: a youthful vivacity, a love of fashion and entertainment, and a captivating, if at times frivolous, presence that drew the court's attention and later its scorn. When Louis XVI, then the Dauphin, sought a strategic alliance with Austria through marriage, he turned his eyes to Marie Antoinette. She accepted her destiny, though perhaps reluctantly, knowing it would forever link her to the Bourbon throne, a union that would irrevocably alter French history. For 23 years, from 1770 to 1793, Marie Antoinette lived a life of extraordinary privilege, yet one increasingly defined by public scrutiny and escalating national turmoil. To marry her, Louis and the French monarchy embraced a union that was initially popular, but later became a symbol of foreign influence and unchecked extravagance. Facing growing dissent from a populace burdened by debt and hunger, and profoundly altering the social fabric of the country. In 1770, Marie Antoinette and Louis were wed in a magnificent ceremony. In 1778, Marie Antoinette gave birth to the much-desired Dauphin, Louis Joseph, though he would not live to inherit the throne. Marie Antoinette's time as queen, though opulent, was beset by challenges. Extravagant and often out of touch, she became known as Madame Deficit, promoting elaborate fashions and indulging in costly pleasures, then forbidden to the common people. To her admirers, she was a symbol of royal grace. To her enemies, and they were legion, a frivolous and dangerous Austrian interloper, her downfall began with the accumulating resentment of the French people. After the birth of her children, Marie Antoinette faced increasing criticism for her perceived extravagance and involvement in politics. The ongoing financial crisis and repeated political missteps were unforgivable in the eyes of a starving nation. As revolutionary fervor escalated, Marie Antoinette's enemies gained strength, especially the radical Jacobin. In August 1792, the conspiracy to overthrow the monarchy gained unstoppable momentum. The royal family was imprisoned, and the National Convention orchestrated a propaganda campaign against the Queen, portraying her as a traitor to France. On October 14th, Marie Antoinette was brought before the Revolutionary Tribunal. The accusations were as preposterous as they were vile: treason, incest with her son, conspiracy against the Republic, and squandering state funds. Her trial on October 14th and 15th was a cruel mockery of justice. Without the right to adequate defense or to call her own witnesses, the Queen was subjected to a tribunal composed entirely of political enemies. Despite her fragile state, Marie Antoinette defended herself with dignity. A witness described how she faced her accusers with an air of composure and defiance. It mattered little. The verdict had been predetermined before the proceedings even began. Guilty with a sentence of death by guillotine, the chosen instrument of the revolution for enemies of the state. Showing no mercy nor any concern for international public opinion, the tribunal confirmed the sentence to beheading by the swift blade. Back to October 16, 1793. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Marie Antoinette was informed that her execution was scheduled for noon. A harsh reality, as she had already spent months grappling with the prospect of death. The additional hours were spent in fervent prayer and a last letter to her sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, a letter that was never delivered. Witnesses report that she walked steadily and calmly, taking communion in her cell before being taken away. At noon, the tumbrel arrived. Marie Antoinette bid farewell to her simple cell and was led out to a waiting open cart. No longer a royal carriage, but a common conveyance for condemned criminals. Remember me and how I fall? She might have mused as she was jostled through the streets. The crowd that gathered to witness the execution was immense, hundreds of thousands of people. There was a hostile, almost carnival-like atmosphere. Most of those present cheered and jeered when Marie Antoinette appeared, dressed in white, her hair roughly cut, walking with a surprising stoicism. On the scaffold, Marie Antoinette was granted permission for a final moment. Her words, if any, were lost to history, drowned out by the shouts of the mob, or perhaps deliberately silenced. What is known is her apology to the executioner, whom she accidentally stepped on. "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." These words, recorded by a witness, reveal a final, almost mundane civility in the face of an extraordinary horror. Even facing an unjust death, Marie Antoinette maintained a semblance of her former grace. By presenting herself with quiet dignity to the end, she preserved a vestige of her regal bearing and indirectly sealed her place in tragic history. After her silent acknowledgement of the crowd, Marie Antoinette was pushed towards the guillotine. She then knelt on the scaffold as the executioner readied the blade. Her hands were tied behind her back. Marie Antoinette continued to move her lips in silent prayer. "Oh Lord, have pity on my soul." The executioner, following the grim ritual, positioned her head swiftly in the lunette. With a sharp tug, the rope was pulled. The blade descended with brutal precision. The heavy knife cut through the slender neck, separating the head from the body in a single, sickening thud. There was a momentary hush, followed by a deafening roar from the crowd. The executioner picked up the head by the hair and raised it, proclaiming, "Long live the Republic." And there was a customary roar of approval, a frenzied cheer that traveled through those present. At that moment, the sounds of celebration, of the revolution's triumph, resounded through the square, echoing across the city. It was the signal for the revolutionaries that the old order was truly dead. Her blood was reportedly collected by some in the crowd as relics. Marie Antoinette's body was unceremoniously collected. No proper coffin had been provided for the former queen. Improvising, the guards found a rough wooden cart where Marie Antoinette's body, with the head placed between her legs, was carried to a common grave in the Madeleine cemetery. There, under the earth, without tombstone or marking, Marie Antoinette was hastily buried in an anonymous grave. The revolutionaries ordered that all portraits of Marie Antoinette be destroyed, her emblems removed from palaces, and her name struck from official records. This damnatio memoria, the condemnation of memory, was initially effective, ensuring that her image faded from public view for a time. However, if the revolutionaries intended to completely erase Marie Antoinette's influence, they failed spectacularly. Years after her execution, her memory ascended to a different kind of throne, that of a tragic martyr. The Bourbon Restoration sought to re-establish her image, and her story became one of sorrow and injustice. In 1815, during the Bourbon Restoration, Louis XVIII ordered the exhumation of Marie Antoinette's remains from the Madeleine cemetery. Among them, a skeleton believed to be hers was identified, though confirmation was difficult given the mass graves. These remains were reburied with more dignity in the Basilica of St. Denis. the traditional burial place of French royalty. Today, the site of Marie Antoinette's execution is a bustling square, the Place de la Révolution, now known as the Place de la Concorde. Each year, on the anniversary of her death, some remember the tragic queen. For many, Marie Antoinette represents not just a symbol of royal downfall, but a figure of immense human suffering and the price that powerful women frequently paid in times of great upheaval. The final irony is that her triumph came through her enduring image as a tragic queen, a figure of pathos that transcended the revolutionary fervor. The memory of Marie Antoinette, the ill-fated queen, would forever be etched in history, a sacrifice that began on that cold October morning in 1793, when a queen walked with dignity to her doom.